everyone. I'm Rochelle Chernowski. This is Shell Point Today for Thursday, May 9th. On today's show, we learn about Knitters Anonymous, the group that creates beautiful items and then sends them out around the world to help the less fortunate. We'll also meet Dr. Charles Shepson, who helped to start a church in Minnesota, which is now celebrating its 50th anniversary. But first, we'd like to remind you about today's big event at the Shell Point Golf Club. The course is currently closed to golfers as crews are excavating all 18 greens and rebuilding them from scratch. It's a fascinating process, one you can see firsthand at the Shell Point Golf Club Open House, happening today starting at 1 p.m. You can see the renovations and learn how the golf course operates. Again, this free event happens this afternoon, and if you need transportation, sign up for court pickup beginning at 1 p.m. Two other events of note today. Dr. Bruce Becker speaks this afternoon at 1 p.m. Not only is he the son of Erhard Becker of King's Crown, but he is also an expert in aquatic exercise, and for 30 years has researched the effects of aquatic therapy and exercise on the human body. With our new aquatic center in the works, now is the perfect time to learn about the importance of aquatic exercise by hearing Dr. Bruce Becker, speaking today at 1 p.m. in the Grand Cypress Room. And the Photo Club meets this afternoon at 2:15 p.m. They'll be showing some highlights from their latest photo safari to the Naples Botanical Garden, and also discussing their plans for the summer. All are welcome to the Shell Point Photo Club, meeting today at 2:15 p.m. in the Manatee Room on the island. Coming up next, we have a story about a knitting group that doesn't actually knit when they get together. They are called Anonymous, and they want everyone to know who they are and what they do. Yes, Knitters Anonymous is an unusual group, but their mission is very worthwhile. They create sweaters, blankets, and baby clothes and send them off to charities where these items can do the most good. We talked to some of the knitters behind Knitters Anonymous.
Hi Shell Point, you are tuned into the Volunteer Corner. I'm Melody Desolé here with three very special women. Joining me today is Emily Kletzien from Sundial, Fran Ippensen from Royal Bonnet, and Kate Ruth from Turban. Now Emily, you are the coordinator of a wonderful group we have here at Shell Point. It's a volunteer group. It's a labor of love. It's called Knitters Anonymous. Can you tell me more about the history of the group?
In 1972, a woman who, with her husband, retired to Fort Myers, wanted to start a knitting group, a knitting ministry, and so that they would knit for missionaries and for different groups around the world. So she decided to give $30,000, and all of the beautiful items that you see are knit by volunteers, and the yarn is purchased from the interest that the endowment produces.
That's great. So the name Knitters Anonymous, that only means you're not anonymous with each other. There's a group of about 50 or so women here that volunteer to knit for these charities. You're anonymous to the charities that you send to.
That's correct.
What are the charities?
The charities are three wonderful groups. We send first to a crisis pregnancy center, and then they are distributed in that area. The second is a Native American reservation in northern Arizona, and the blankets that you see here go to the elderly for lap blankets. And the third one is World Mission. And for World Mission, we send for refugees, for articles for children, and for families.
So these items tend to go to areas that have cooler temperatures, so not necessarily our backyard in Florida, but the cooler areas of
Arizona, Pennsylvania, and throughout the world. World Missions, we don't know where it goes.
Now, how many shipments of boxes, and you can see that box there, it's quite big when you stack these knitted items up. How many shipments do you do per year?
I do 3 or 4, depending on, and right now, we're bursting at the seams with so many articles that the girls have knit over the season and even in the summer.
That's great. Now, Fran, you are both a knitter and a crocheter. Now, the name Knitters Anonymous means that it's knitters, but it's also open to crocheters as well. Is that correct?
That's correct. Here's our knitting needles. They come in all sizes. These are the large size, but some of the items are knitted on much smaller needles. And this is an example of a crochet needle. And some of the items that you see here, people like to crochet and people like to knit, but both people are welcome to come and knit things for Knitters Anonymous. As Emily mentioned, there is the interest from an endowment that we use to purchase the yarn, but also people donate yarn, and they also donate needles and crochet hooks that they no longer use.
Now, these items are strictly for the volunteer efforts of Knitters Anonymous.
That's correct. That's correct.
Now, if someone were to be interested in joining the group, where is the yarn and things located?
Okay, behind us here there are cabinets that are designated for the Knitters Anonymous. These particular boxes in here, Emily purchases the yarn and then she designates particular boxes for, these are baby weight yarn, and then you can come in and you can select whatever yarn you want for whatever project you have in mind.
Oh, and there's various colors.
Right, it's designated as baby weight and then different colors. Okay. And then up above there are the needles there are circular needles some people like to use, and then there are irregular needles, and there are also crochet hooks that are available. And these are the patterns. We have a number of patterns that have turned out to be very popular.
So now the group doesn't necessarily have to knit together. You can certainly knit on your own time.
That's correct, and probably most people do that. They knit on their own, and then they come in once a month and they bring their items in, and they have an opportunity when they bring them in to see who else is in the group and also have an opportunity to see what projects other people are doing.
We encourage those volunteers to continue knitting if they so desire throughout the summer months.
Yes.
Anyone who desires to turn in something during the summer can certainly do so in my office. Now, Kate, how did you come to know about Knitters Anonymous?
I learned when we moved here, I read the weekly reminder and saw the Knitters Anonymous there, and I thought, well, I'll go over and see what that's all about.
Has your experience been a pleasant one thus far, the group?
Very pleasant. When I got the opportunity, the blessing to move into Shell Point, I decided I wanted to share what time I have to Knitters Anonymous and helping other people.
That's great. Now, what are some of the items that you have contributed to the group?
Well, this one here I just finished.
Oh, that's beautiful. Little baby blanket in the pastel colors.
And then this one is another blanket. I guess this would go out to Arizona.
Wow. So items range in textures, patterns, colors.
And then this sweater here I made. Here's another one that would be great in Arizona, wouldn't it?
So these are heavier material. This is not the baby weight. No. This is a heavier, what kind of material or yarn?
Worsted, wasn't it? Worsted wool.
Worsted wool. So that will keep you really warm. Now, these hours that you put into knitting, we keep track of those hours.
Right.
How do we collect those hours at the end?
Well, when they come in on Wednesday, when you bring your item in on Wednesday, you write your name down on a piece of paper and write how many hours you did making it.
Well, as volunteer coordinator, I kept track of a lot of hours of different groups, and you're in the thousands, the group together. So I am astounded at the generosity. I'm astounded at the beautiful textures and patterns and creativity that goes into this group. For volunteers who are interested, who is invited to the group? We already mentioned crocheters and knitters, but what's the skill set?
Really, a person just has the interest to come in and donate their time. On Tuesday afternoons, we have a group of experienced and inexperienced people who get together, and there are always people that can help someone with their project. So even though they're just a beginner, there is help there for them to help them with their project.
For those of you who are interested in joining this great effort of volunteer work, you can do so by contacting me, 454-2290. As a note, since its inception, this group has made over 30,000 knitted items for those who are less fortunate. So let's keep up the good work, let's join this volunteer group, and have a wonderful summer.
Dr. Charles Shepson of Sundial is known for many things: his inspiring books, his deep voice, and his unique in-character monologues delivered at Christmas time. But his life as a pastor had very humble beginnings, starting when he was very young. In one of his first pulpits, he helped to start a church in Minnesota called Word of Life, which recently celebrated its 50th anniversary. Dr. Shepson told us about his early days with the church, where they met another couple, Leon and Arliss Bowman, who are now their best friends and now are also living at Shell Point.
I was born in New Jersey and reared there, and then moved from there to Minneapolis area. My dad was a railroad man. He repaired passenger cars, so we had passes. We could go anywhere in the United States. As far back as I can remember, I wanted to be a pastor. However, my parents separated, and I became the head of the home at about 12 years of age, too young for working papers. However, I did get a job. I worked at a chemical factory in the office. I had a desk there at the offices. So I grew up fast. I went to Nyack College in Nyack, New York, and took the Bible and Theology program in preparation for the ministry. Had a little hard time getting in because I had dropped out of high school in order to support the family, and they finally let me in on probation to see whether I could do college work or not. So I graduated from college. I graduated from high school one day and from college the next day, because I did it by means of the various tests that you can take and get your high school equivalency certificate. My first pastorate, people would come to the door and say, "Is the pastor at home?" And I would say, "I am the pastor." Or they would say, "Is your father in?" So it was a bit of a problem at first. The president of St. Paul Bible College approached me and asked if I would come and replace the man who taught pastoral methods and homiletics there. He had passed away, and they needed somebody urgently. And I, by that time, had my master's degree from New York University, so they had me come, and then I kept on working toward my doctorate right while I was teaching. We had heard about the snow and how heavy it was and all, and how cold the winters were, and those things were true, but not the first year that we were there. We had a very mild winter the first year we were there, which was a delight to us. It was a good way to get acclimated. There was a young couple, his name Martin Paulette, and they were holding Bible studies in their home in a suburb of Minneapolis. And it grew to 15, 18, 20 people, and they decided, that little group, that they'd like to establish a church in that area. And so they wanted someone to come and preach for them, and I agreed to go Sunday mornings and evenings as just to be a part-time type pastor, just the preaching pastor, not there during the week because I was busy at the Bible college during the week. In the morning, we met at the Morris By Elementary School, and then for the evening services, we met at Peace Lutheran Church. We rented the church for the evening services. It was exciting because during the time I was there, it grew to the extent that when we left only because they called their first full-time pastor, and we were already drawing up plans for their first building. So it was just exciting to see rather rapid growth there. One Sunday night after the evening service, we locked up the church, went out into the parking lot, and were visiting with the remaining people in the rather dark parking lot. I had been packing up the station wagon, and I laid my Bible, my very precious Bible, because it had notes from the years of sermons in it. I laid it on the top of the vehicle while I put some things in, fully intending, of course, to put it inside, and completely forgot it. We climbed in our vehicle and we headed out to the freeway. We traveled 55 miles an hour. There were trucks, semis that passed us and rocked our own vehicle, and there were 2 rough patches of road and round corners, and finally we arrived at our home, and I stepped out, and there was the Bible on top. Hadn't moved an inch, and the open side of it was toward the front. The binding was toward the rear. It was catching all that wind, and it had never moved. And to this day I envision an angel sitting on top of the car with his hand firmly on top of the Bible, keeping it in place until we got home. One of the best things that happened for me was that in that congregation, the Word of Life Church, was a couple by the name of Leon and Arliss Bowman. Arliss Bowman was on the marimba. Leon Bowman led the singing. For such a little church to have such talented musicians was wonderful, and it helped to draw people because they liked a good music program. Before ever going there, my wife and I had sat down together one day and said, you know, we don't have any close friends, really close. We have lots of friends, but no close friends. Wouldn't it be nice if there'd be a couple where he would become my best friend and she would become your best friend? And when there's something that you want, God encourages you to ask for it. And so we did. We put it on our prayer list. Lord, let us find the couple of our dreams. And when we went to that church, Leon and Arliss became for us the ones we had asked for. And now here it is 50 years later, and we are the best of friends. We traveled all through Europe together on a vacation. We've been to the Holy Land together. We went to South America together, and we became such good friends that we even drew up wills in which if anything happened to either couple, the other couple would take the children and rear them. So Leon and Arliss Bowman are now living here at Shell Point from Teledora here now. The Lord very specifically answered that prayer at the Word of Life Church. It kind of came out of the blue. In fact, the congregation had grown to the point where I knew hardly anyone anymore that had been there when I was there. So when his invitation came to come the first weekend of May for their 50th anniversary, I was startled to realize, was that really 50 years ago? I'm delighted with that. That's why we start churches, because we want them to be an ongoing blessing. It makes me feel really good talking about Word of Life. Pleased about that.
Do you have friends here at Shell Point that you knew 30, 40, or even 50 years ago? Then we want to hear about it. Contact Jared Pike by phone or by email and tell us about your Shell Point neighbors who you met growing up in school, in the armed forces, or in your local neighborhood. You just might see your friendly connection here on Shell Point TV. For now, let's cover all of today's happenings from resort services. Then stay tuned for your Academy news, menus, and Village Church connections.
It's Thursday, May 9th, and thank you for joining us for the Happening segment of Shell Point TV. I'm Bev Chandley here with Suzanne Savata, and we're going to start with the happenings right now. At 7:15, we have a Health Connections class, Bend, Breathe, and Balance, down at the Health Club. 7:20, we have an early morning departure for our Academy on the Go trip. This is the overnight trip to the Morse Museum up in Winter Park and other destinations. Court pickups begin at 7:20 on the island, 7:30 at the Woodlands, and 7:40 at Eagles Preserve. That trip is full. 8 o'clock's the time. The round-robin men's doubles tennis will be going on down at the tennis courts. And then 9:15, we have shuffleboard at the shuffleboard court. 9:30, we have current events. They hold this in the game room of the Woodlands. Also at 9:30, we have ladies match play tennis down at the Woodlands tennis courts. Our last 9:30 activity is the Paddlers Club. They'll be meeting at the kayak storage for their weekly paddle. 9:45, you'll find Introduction to Beginning Line Dancing down in the Health Club. That's followed at 10:15 by Basic Line Dancing in the Health Club. That which is followed by 11:15 Advanced Line Dancing in the Health Club. And that line dancing concludes the morning. Here's Suzanne to tell you what's going on this afternoon.
At 1 o'clock, we have the Golf Course Open House. Court pickups will begin at 1 o'clock on the island, 1:10 at the Woodlands, and 1:20 at Eagles Preserve. Sign up is required for this. Also at 1 o'clock, we have a Health Connections, Understanding Aquatic Exercise in the Grand Cypress Room at the Woodlands, and sign up is also required. At 1:15, Mahjong will be played in the Library Lounge on the island. And at 2:15, the Photo Club will be meeting in the Manatee Room on the island. 2:45, we have another Health Connections, Balance and Mobility Training Level 2 in the Health Club on the island, and this is closed. At 4 o'clock, the Seamstress will be in the Osprey Room for the weekly visit. And at 4:30, the Alcoholics Anonymous meeting will take place in the Sable Room at the Woodlands. 7 o'clock, we have Pinnacle in the Library Lounge on the island, and we have the Trailblazers Bible Study Group meeting in the Game Room at the Woodlands. That wraps up Thursday. We hope you have a great day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow for the weekend edition.
Menus for Thursday. In the Crystal Room, the Crystal Platter is Swiss steak with au gratin potatoes and buttered peas. The dinner special is the Crystal Carving Board for $10.95, and the soup of the day is beef rice. In the Island Cafe for lunch, enjoy a ham, turkey, and Swiss sub with chips for $6.95. The dinner special is Thai night for $7.95. Specials in the Palm Grill on Thursday are New York Strip for $19.95 or Veal Spadini for $15.95. All menus are available 24 hours a day at www.shellpoint.net.
Hello, my name is Peter Nanfelt, and I want to welcome you to another segment of Village Church Connections. This week we're continuing to learn more about our new senior pastor, Reverend Andrew Hawkins, and I want to welcome you again today.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here and sharing your time, letting us get to know you a little bit more.
My pleasure.
You know, we all go about things a little bit differently. We all have our own unique capabilities or gifts. Even on a baseball team, there's a player that may have a fastball and another pitcher may have a good curveball. All important, contribute, excellent skills. Preaching is somewhat similar in that people go about it in a different way. How would you describe your preaching gift or skill? Style, maybe?
Pretty much all fastballs with a few change-ups thrown in from time to time. Don't throw very many curveballs. Essentially, I like to make sure that the text speaks for itself and that I'm communicating with clarity to the people of God. Occasionally, I can say that I'll probably throw a high, hard one from time to time to brush people back and get their attention. But generally speaking, I like to play it pretty straight.
Yeah. Good analogy. I wonder, is there a specific reason why you've chosen that kind of style? I mean, do you use a lot of illustrations? Do you always preach from the Scripture? What is your selection there?
Well, I have the reason why I've selected that style is that I have a great deal of confidence in the Scriptures and not a lot of confidence in my imagination. And so I want to try to find a style that allows the Scripture to speak for itself. So I use what's called expository preaching, and I base it on what we call inductive Bible study, so that we try to understand what the sense of the text is really all about so that we can communicate it effectively to the people of God. Now, I do use illustrations and there are stories, but they are designed to essentially correspond with what the text is trying to communicate. So I'm much more interested in what the author of the Scriptures has to say than what Andy Hawkins has to say.
All right. So if we come to the services, we can expect to hear about the Bible and what the Bible has to say.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
That's encouraging. When you prepare a sermon, let's say for a Sunday morning service, what do you feel is your underlying goal? What do you want to accomplish when you come before the people of God to deliver a sermon?
Well, I try to, first of all, have essentially the mind of the Lord about a passage or a text that I'm preaching, which essentially means that I want to make sure I get the essence of what is the driving theme or thought in this particular passage. Okay. So I generally don't like to even begin sermon preparation until I have the big idea or the main idea behind a particular text. I also want to make sure that I understand the context of the passage so that the people of God can understand why the author has come to this particular point in his letter or in the book of the Bible, what he really wants to say to God's people as a result, how it fits into their context, and then I want to make sure I always am able to make good applications to people in the here and now, today. So it's important to make sure that people leave knowing that this is how I'm supposed to be different when I leave compared to when I came in to a worship service.
What change is necessary?
That's correct. Yeah. That's right.
Will you be preaching in series? Will you be using topical messages from time to time, or will you be speaking mainly from through a book in the Bible, maybe chapter by chapter kind of thing? What can we expect in the future?
Pretty much home for me would be preaching through a book of the Bible, sort of section by section, chapter by chapter. Okay. That's where I think it allows the text to speak for itself, and we get the best sense of what the author was trying to say. But the change-ups come when I'll do a topical series from time to time, or maybe a particular message on a particular occasion that I sense the Lord leading. And so I do change that every once in a while, but essentially home base for me would be preaching through a book of the Bible. Now those books all have topics and themes, and so I select them based upon what I think this particular church will profit from at a particular time.
Sometimes Old, sometimes New Testament?
That's correct, yes.
You know, the Bible, as you well know, talks about prophets, teachers, encouragers, shepherds. Different people have different gifts. That's right. And all are important, as we said before. Are there any specific gifts that God has given to you, and He's given you a number of outstanding gifts, that you're trusting that God will help you to use maximally effectively in the coming months, years?
Well, I think my major gift is teaching. And so certainly there are people who preach and communicate words of exhortation, and certainly my preaching will do that. At the same time, there usually is a depth about that preaching based upon my gifts of teaching.
Well, thank you very much, Pastor, for coming again today and sharing a little bit about your preaching style and what we can look forward to in the months and years to come. We are looking forward to it.
Thank you.
We appreciate what we have heard so far. And we appreciate all of you being with us today for Village Church Connections. May God bless you today.
We're glad you joined us for today's show. Tune in tomorrow as we tell you about a travel scam that may be sitting in your mailbox, even right now. Until then, this is Shell Point Today for Thursday, May 9th. I'm Rochelle Chernowski. From all of us here at Shell Point TV, we hope you have a great day, and we'll see you again tomorrow.